Are you looking for valuable business advice to reach that 7-figure revenue mark? Do you want actionable tips to properly navigate through every business challenge you encounter along the way? Let Tersh Blissett and Josh Crouch be your guide in getting you to the top here at Service Business Mastery. Tune in as they sit down with world-renowned authors in business, leadership, and personal growth who share valuable insights about management, marketing, pricing, human resources, and so much more. Let their nuggets of wisdom gold guide you in owning a thriving, profitable, and ever-growing business. Here are your hosts, Tersh and Josh.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast. Hope you're having a great day. You're listening to or watching the Service Business Mastery Podcast. On today's episode, Josh and I are talking to Daniel Simon with Coast. They're a smart fleet card. On today's episode, we talk a ton. You'll learn very quickly that Daniel is extremely passionate about what he does and the fintech or financial technologies when it comes to managing fleet fuel cards. He has been doing it for a while and he's deeply involved with it, and you'll be able to tell that very quickly. We talk why smart cards versus your legacy cards is what he called them, how they connect to different platforms, the integrations. We talk a lot about what you call the tech pack, the programs that you should have in your business to help manage your fleet and make your business more efficient. So if you're interested in learning on how to make your business more efficient and save money at the same time as preventing any kinds of frauds and those types of things and making things easier, this is definitely an episode for you, because I know that fleet management in itself is like inventory management. And a lot of times it's just one of those things that we ignore and just chalk it up as a loss in, a line item as a cost of doing business. That's not the way it needs to be. And I challenge you to check out this episode. If you do find value in our podcast in general, please leave us a review. Please write the review. I know that that's a little bit to ask for, especially if allow you just to give a 5-star rating. Apple's kind of cracking down on the 5 stars without words. And so it would mean the world to Josh and I if we got a 5-star review and you wrote out a little note on the things that you've found of value from the podcast. But with that being said, let's get started with today's episode. Hey, Daniel, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Hey, Tersh. Hey, Josh. How you guys doing?
We're doing great.
Fabulous.
Before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about Coast and yourself and your background?
So Coast is a modern expense management software and charge card specifically designed for the needs of companies that operate fleets of vehicles. So if you run, let's say, an HVAC business and you need to give the technician who works for you the company credit card when they take the van out to go do their jobs, you need specialized control, security, visibility. You need really specialized reporting with software, and that's what we sell. The company's been around for a number of years. In terms of my background, been kind of in the fintech business for quite a long time now. It's my second startup. Previously started a company that was in consumer credit and payments called Bread, which we grew to a pretty sizable business. And before that, was a software engineer in robotics and banking, and also went to law school, business school. So done a whole bunch of stuff. Actually, I'll say, ended up being really well suited to running a fintech company. Yeah. So both of my companies, like fintech, I use kind of like the buzz term for like financial technology. That's what people call it in sort of the tech world. The company at its core is like really a software business, and because of all my experience in that world, I'm pretty damn good as a software engineer and product architect and all that stuff.
Let me ask you this, because it's not uncommon for me to hear people who have even entrepreneurs, but I will say it kind of in the software space, but who have a law background. What's the advantage to that?
It's actually super interesting. I went to law school when I was already had a software engineering career, but I was interested in like politics and policy and that kind of stuff. And I wasn't going to get there from my tech career. And I had a super spotty academic background. I was a high school dropout. I dropped out of a couple colleges, and I figured if I go to a fancy law school, people will think I'm smart. And I went to a fancy law school, and it totally worked. And now people think I'm smart. But like while I was there, I tried like some of the stuff
Noted.
that was interesting to me. Like, like first summer there, I worked in counterterrorism policy in the government. I was like, well, I don't want to be a civil service bureaucrat after all. And end up working for my last year of the law and business school program at a hedge fund, and didn't really like it. And interesting people with interesting ideas started approaching me to co-found fintech companies, and so I started that last one as I was finishing school. And I'll say, like on the law side of things, in financial services in particular, it's like a super complicated and highly regulated industry, and like being able to navigate that, like the legal and regulatory training that I got from that law school experience, has been an enormous asset for me. So I can't speak to sort of other kinds of entrepreneurship, but in the industry in which I operate, like it turned out to be like excellent training.
My oldest son is his desire is to go to law school for tax law, and I was like, oh, that's perfect.
Something's wrong with your kid.
You could be my tax lawyer. So
I don't think too many high schoolers that want to go for tax law.
Tax law. I mean, we've talked a lot about different things,
and probably make good money doing it. And a lot of people, you can kind of name your price, because that's a great.
It is a great career. It is. So, anyways, when it comes to smart cards, what does that even define? Because one of the things I feel like fleet management is up there with like insurance. Once you've finally just gotten somebody that you're used to, like changing,
you get comfortable.
Yeah, you get comfortable with it, and changing is just like I got bigger fish to fry, or I have bigger fires to put out, really. And so like this isn't a problem. So why am I going to go even look into addressing it? What's your thoughts?
Yeah. Usually when we show people the software, it's kind of the aha moment for them, and they see like sort of that there is this new generation of spend management software that helps you reduce the friction of making payments for the stuff that you need. And your use of financial services should really speak the language of your kind of business. And your bank isn't going to be the one to provide you with those kinds of tools that understand your business needs, but like specialized cutting edge technology like this can. I mean, so let me step back for a second actually and talk about, you alluded to this before we started the show, like about what the need is for fuel cards in general, right? If you operate a vehicle fleet that has more than just a couple of vehicles, you need some kind of a fleet or fuel card. You could run a trucking business, but like even more so, it's about like plumbers and landscaping crews and like HVAC businesses, pest control, local delivery, and lots of other kinds of operators. And when you give that technician who works for you the company credit card, you need that visibility and control. So you want to make sure that people are buying like the right grade of gas, right? They're not going into the convenience store or the gas station to buy potato chips and cigarettes, right? They're, not gassing up their personal car or doing other wacky stuff with the card.
Or putting 93 octane in the work van.
Exactly.
With the 5-gallon buckets.
By the way, like. Well, no joke, by the way, like people do stuff like, even with like a traditional fuel card, like the one that you probably use, you might be able to set like a limit in terms of the number of times they could use a card in a given day, right? So what people will do is like they'll fill up the company car, and then in the same transaction before they put the pump back, the wife is behind with the family car and fill it up, and that way they get around that control. Or like, like what you're talking about is people will put like a bladder on the gas tank of the truck and like overfill it so they can sell the gas at a discount to the next guy in line. Like people are incredibly creative to like thank you for right. Now most of your, we see this all the time.
Daniel, it's funny to me that people go to such lengths to like make a buck or to save money. So like if they just would take that energy
right
towards something that actually would further their career, they'd be so much further ahead instead of like trying to find the shady ways to like make a couple bucks.
I like to say
focus.
I like to say that fraud is the mother of invention. I don't know why it's what gets people's creative juices flowing, but like
it's like a game.
Most of your guys are going to be like good, loyal, trustworthy people, right? But like there's always like a few of them that aren't, and like going after, like trying to track that stuff, like is a huge time suck, and also kind of creates an atmosphere of mistrust with the good guys that are on your team, right? So, and by the way, like controlling these expenses is important for your bottom line, right? Like you were talking earlier about how like you could get rewards on Amex, right? But those rewards for your gas spend are just totally wiped out if it turns out that like your gas is being purchased inefficiently, or there's abuse or waste on the thing, right? So that's why these categories exist. And like by the time like people get up to like 10 vehicles, let's say at that size, like basically everybody's got some kind of fuel card solution already. And we serve thousands of businesses that look like that, but we also serve companies that have like hundreds or 1,000 vehicles, et cetera, because everybody needs this kind of solution. Now I'll finally get back to sort of like answering your question, right? There's been this industry, like what's the old versus the smart style, right?
Yeah.
There's been this like industry for like decades now to serve this need, right? And they sell fuel cards that mostly are what's called closed loop, which means that like they're not on Visa and MasterCard usually. They're like the special proprietary system that like gas stations specifically had to do the work to accept as an alternative method of payment, which isn't everywhere, by the way. So sometimes, you know, if you're out on a job, you have to like find like the place that accepts it, which is time that you should be spending getting to your job, right? And not spending burning gas, like riding around. They typically don't have like chips in them, which means that they're susceptible to like skimming and fraud, which is like very rampant at gas stations. And then a lot of them operate using a system to try to get the data by collecting the information at that little dial pad that's on the gas pump, right? So like, you know, your PIN or odometer reading, et cetera. And I know how like your techs behave or, you know, the employees that your customers have, but like they absolutely hate this. Like they get out of the cab of the vehicle in the freezing cold. They forgot what the odometer says.
Like,
they're propped
door
up
back up.
like 999.
I gotta get this in this van and get the.
Or they just put crappy data in. They just type like 99999 or whatever, and then all of a sudden you can't use. Or like they'll share their pins with one another. The vehicle will the card will get into the wrong vehicle, and now like your data is like a mess, and you can't like understand what's actually going on with your vehicles and your fleet. So like for us, like a smart card is like totally different. So first, it runs on Visa. So wherever you need to fill up, you'll be able to go to the cheapest place, the most convenient place that's on your routes, which means a lot to our customers. It integrates with your employees' mobile experiences on their phones that they all carry with their SMS and other sorts of interactions so that you can like securely authenticate the use of the card in like a real-time and secure way because you're texting from a known phone number that's assigned to that particular employee. And then because we're on that phone channel, we can collect additional information about the transaction, receipts, memos, job codes, right? That can then get pushed into your accounting systems to make categorization, reconciliation easier. It can also be used because it runs on the Visa network for expenses outside of fuel because it works everywhere that Visa is accepted, but with really precise controls that you can set on policies for who in your fleet can spend how much and where and when at different stuff like picking up extra supplies at Home Depot when you didn't get them at the warehouse or sort of car washes and parts.
So this could do away with them having to have a additional company credit card.
Exactly right. Our customers that transition from the old stuff usually have to have some second program for those other field expenses, which to your point can be an invitation for abuse and fraud, or you have a cumbersome system of receipts and reimbursements or something like that. Having a single solution, right, that gives you exactly the control you need on the fuel side, but the flexibility and visibility to set the controls for other kinds of field spend. It's like a no-brainer for our customers. We connect to telematics and GPS, right? You guys are probably using some kind of GPS on your vehicles. So that allows us to do things like, you know, additional controls, like why is somebody trying to make a purchase, you know, at a gas station that we know is far away from the GPS location of the vehicle that they're supposed to be in right in that moment, right? There's integrating into your accounting system to like automatically categorize and code transactions. So it's ultimately the smart fuel card is like meant to just like save you a bunch of time and money, like by giving you that control and reporting around your fuel spend while empowering your mobile workforce to spend on what they need to get the job done. So I'm pretty biased, but like I think we really reinvented the category in a lot of ways. And so our customers seem to think so too.
Yeah, so you can set it up so it automatically categorizes each one of them, or does it basically send it into like a draft folder and it still needs to be overlooked? Say you use QuickBooks Online.
Yeah, so today, in the early version of what we launched for accounting integration, you get some suggestions as you get those transactions on sort of how to categorize them. But we take your ledger, which is in your QuickBooks Online, we pull it into Coast system, and you can set some basic rules on how stuff can get categorized before the expenses are pushed back into the system appropriately. We're going to be improving that over time. You know, before we started the podcast, you asked me about AI. One of the great applications that we can use AI for in the product, we haven't done this today, but we will be doing it in the medium term, is to see the pattern of how transactions that look like the one that you did have been categorized in the past with a little bit of training and some basic rules, so that like the thing that you need to look over is just like, yep. Okay, actually not that needs to change. And then you can push it. But like the point is, it's a whole lot easier than keying in every transaction manually to code it for what it's supposed to be.
Are you familiar with a program called Dext?
Dex, yes, I think it's also a card. Oh, it's expense management.
No, it's so basically it's where we like send all of our receipts to Dext, and Dext will transcribe it and then categorize it, and then sends it from Dext to QuickBooks. And so basically, it's where we collect all our receipts from the field, and it take a picture of it. And
You just taking pictures. You're just taking a picture.
yeah,
of it?
take a picture of it and it uploads, and then Dex transcribes it and then categorizes it. But it still requires someone to overlook the process and like approve it, and so it keeps track of which card's spending on what on what items. And basically for us it was a receipt capture process because of us being remote. We don't have a centralized office, and so we were gathering receipts once a month, and how bad that ended up. Terrible.
Putting them in a shoebox.
Oh, it was terrible. And then they were faded and everything else. So that was our solution for that problem. But if this is all being captured in one area for the technicians' receipts, I mean,
that's exactly right. So like for a Coast, it's all sort of integrated because the use of the card can follow the rules and policies that you have for receipt and other information capture. So for instance, let's say that you have a policy. Let me walk you through how this would work in like the real world with a Coast customer. Like you as the manager, Tersh, you've gone into the system and you've said, I want to put Josh on a policy for my technicians in Savannah, or in Phoenix. And like in that policy, he can spend this much on gas. He can spend this many times a week on gas. But, I'm also going to allow him to every once in a while do hardware and supplies up to a certain amount. And if he purchases specifically hardware and supplies over like, say, $25, I want him to give me a receipt and a memo. Let's give those as examples, right? Now, Josh gets into the work truck at the beginning of the day to go on whatever jobs he's got to dispatch to, right? He pulls, let's say that there's a card that's in like the glove box or the visor of the vehicle. He takes it out. The card's got an ID on it that says something like ABC123. Josh texts ABC123 to Coast. We're like, oh, is it Josh? We know his phone number because we put him in the system with that phone number. Yes. Okay, now, and are you still in Mercedes Sprinter van license plate XYZ? Yes. Okay, now all the transactions that Josh attempts are going to be going through the policies that apply to him and to that vehicle and the combination thereof, and we'll get the line item detail of the transaction. If he does that transaction in Home Depot that he's approved to do by policy, if it's over that $25, he'll immediately get a text from Coast as soon as he swipes that says, hey, we saw that you purchased $30 from Home Depot by your policy. You need to send a receipt. Please take a picture. And just in the SMS channel, right, like in your messages app, he'll just take a picture. That'll go to Coast, automatically get attached to the transaction so I can get pushed into the accounting system upstream, right? If, by the way, like we do other cool things with that stuff. Like, so let's say you didn't set a policy that allowed him to go Home Depot. He should always get declined. But this one time, Josh is on the road and like, there's some like piece of hardware that he just needs to pick up. He goes into Home Depot.
Just random thing.
He like tries the transaction. He gets declined because your rules said that he can't do it. He gets a text saying why he was declined. You're not allowed in this merchant category. Do you want to request an exception? He'll text yes. Like you, Tersh, are going to get like a message on your phone saying Josh is trying to make this purchase and he's got this memo here as to why he needs to do this. Do you want to allow it? You'll be like, yes, this one time. It'll go through the second time he tries, and it'll be flagged in our system for you to review later to make sure, did this actually look the way that it was supposed to? So it's because of that sort of integration with the mobile device with the customer that and the fact that the card is connected to the expense management system as it's being used, it just makes the process like very smooth and like kind of seamless for everyone involved.
Yeah, so it's not a technician looking for an email to come and then texting me or calling me and saying, hey, you look for an email, and then we're looking to log into the account. And I was like, I don't log into that account, so let me find the password for it, blah, blah, blah. And then it turns into a 45-minute time suck.
Most of the technicians who use Coast as employees don't even have usernames and passwords to log into the Coast system. Their managers just put them in there with a phone because that's all that they're going to need. And like we've got like when you think about the kind of people who are on jobs for a lot of these businesses, some of them are temporary laborers or contract workers, et cetera. We've got customers who are using like dumb phone, flip phone, T9 predictive text, and the system works like just as well. It's just it works beautifully. We are building an app now, so that like for those who want to have like an actual sort of like native app experience and a better UX, you can do it. But we needed to have something that would work for everybody, and that's the SMS process.
Daniel, I want to ask you. So we talked a little bit where you guys are going to start moving into some AI and some analytics and stuff, and I think at least in my head when I think of like fuel management and some of these expense management, I would think the analysis of the data that comes in would probably be like the biggest, at least in my mind, the biggest use case for AI. Is there anything that because obviously like certain things like Church and I are very involved with, like I'm very involved with digital marketing. So I see all kinds of AI use cases for digital marketing because that's what I'm focused on. Is there anything that you're seeing, like people, they get their monthly reports, whether it's through your service or something else, and that they can upload a sheet and they're analyzing and finding ways to save 3% here, 8% here, stuff like that. Is that anything like that you've run across on the analysis side?
Yeah, so let me talk about sort of what we do today and like what we plan to do with the data that we've got not too far down the road. So what we do today is more in the sort of operational background, right? To make our business run more efficiently so we can serve our customers better. So an example of this that I mentioned to you before is like, because we have a credit card, sometimes we need to do some analysis of the finances of the customers that are coming on board. So for some customers, when they apply to use the product, we'll ask them, hey, can you upload bank statements so we can verify your revenue? When they do that, we use tools that lean on machine learning and AI to like figure out if it doesn't matter which one of the thousands of banks that you use, it'll figure out like, has this been tampered with? Is it fraudulent? And like extract the data about the company's cash flow and finances that we can use to automatically put into our models so that a customer can come into Coast, give us their information. And in a lot of cases, because the decision is happening entirely automated, we can say, hey, congratulations, your approved plastic's on the way, which is a far cry from kind of what people are used to in working with credit cards. So it's easier for us operationally, and it's a better and less frictionful customer experience. But the stuff that we want to be able to do, and I think that this is more what you're getting at, Josh, is like when you think about it, like Coast is in like a really interesting place because we've got the vehicle data, right, on the one hand, because of our integration into telematics systems and getting all the gauge readings and GPS locations, et cetera. But we also can intersect that with all the purchase data that we've got that's related to the vehicle because that's happening through Coast's platform. So when you take that together, there are things that you should be able to do to provide real insights back to the management of a business about how they could do things more efficiently. Hey, did you know that yesterday your guys went this way on their jobs and they bought gas here, here, and here? But if they'd just gone that way and gone here, here, and there, you would have saved $100 in 2 hours and you could have done another job or something like that. So that's coming. We're building up sort of that like foundation of data to be able to build on top of it. But the new technologies that are out there make it a real possibility.
That's great. That's kind of what I was getting at. With your system, and I know this is it's a little bit tied into GPS, but I'm sure Church has experienced this. I know I used to, when I was in HVAC, we used to experience all the time. Guys would leave their freaking trucks on for 45 minutes on idle in a parking lot or warm. They'd sit in there forever when they're filming. That's when we had paper invoices. Or they'd be on the phone and they wouldn't move and they just sit there for like an hour. Is there anything like stuff like that with comes to analytics, like how long they're like tying in with GPS data with the fuel card? Because obviously the longer they're idling, it causes more fuel, which means their fuel efficiency goes down. Something like that where it's alerts, because we have so much data, and this is just one segment of data, right? This is fuel and expense management. We got marketing, sales, all this data points. And I think that's the part where especially home services struggles is there's so much numbers, and the industry as a whole is not a numbers driven group of people. It's just not. They like working with their hands. They like interacting with people. So taking that massive amount of data up here and making it very simple for people okay, what is it? What's the story here? What is it telling me?
So let me tell you like one thing that we do today as just like to address the one example that you gave. Because we connect with vehicle telematics, and alternatively, we can collect odometer readings over SMS from the technician if you enable that feature as well.
I was going to ask that. That's a great feature.
And then, by the way, some of our customers, they do both. They want the guy to put in the odometer reading on the phone, even though they know the right answer from the vehicle as well, which I find. One thing that we do is we just look at the information that we have about the purchases of gas and how much they bought and like how long it's been. And we look at the odometer reading and we just flag transactions to managers and say, hey, the miles per gallon that's implied by this purchase like looks a little off, right? And so in the example that you're giving of that person like sitting there idling in the vehicle, like we'll just pick that up based on the purchase and odometer data and infer it. The other thing that we do today is just we partner with like a lot of great telematics vendors, right? Our product integrates with tools from Samsara, from Geotab, from Azuga, Verizon Connect, a bunch of others. And a lot of our customers find that the integration, first off, synchronization of information about vehicles between their telematics system, or by the way, their fleet management software like Fleetio and Coast, allows for much easier management of all the things that have to do with the vehicles in their fleet. But they also can use a lot of really great tools that are built into the software that powers those GPS and telematics systems to be able to detect things like anomalous usage, anomalous idling, and things of that nature. So there's stuff that we do that we're especially able to do because we understand so much about the fuel transactions. But there's also this great stuff that our partners enable on their own.
So do you recommend that a company still use something like Fleetio?
Yeah, I do. So I think Fleetio like starts to like really kick in when like you're getting to like 20, 25 vehicles and above, because at that point like you really need to be thinking about, and I'm sure they'll be mad at me for saying that, but like that's kind of like what I see like in like a lot of customer use cases, but like that's what we see among our customers who use it, because at that point you really need to keep track of your maintenance schedules, and we do things like we push data about transactions for vehicles back into Fleetio so that like a customer who's looking at it will really get a full sense of the total cost of ownership of their vehicle, not just fuel purchases, but other kinds of purchases that people do related to the vehicle as well. Because that's something that you really care about when like your fleet is starting to become such this big asset in your business. You really need to understand the expenses that are related to it. But like we talked to like a customer who runs like an 80 vehicle, like 100 employee pest control business, who switched from a legacy system that I think you guys know over to Coast. And he did this incredible video testimonial for us because he uses Fleetio on the one hand and Coast on the other. And he's like, now I can rely on this data. Now I have a source of truth that I can understand what's going on with my fleet and make decisions that I'm confident in about my fleet. Generally speaking, I mean, when we talk about sort of like the fleet tech stack, like there's a few different pieces that like we think are really important, and that like really should talk really well with one another, right? So first you got to have like some kind of CRM system, right? Like whether it's like, you know, Jobber or House Call Pro or ServiceSight or something that's like more industry specific, like a Pest Pack or like for pest control, or Aspire for landscaping, like there's like that stuff that like will tell you for what jobs you have to go to and how you dispatch your folks, collecting payments for accounts receivable, sometimes inventory management. So a real operating system for your business is one piece of it. Then you got to have like a really sort of appropriate accounting system, right? In terms, you were already talking about QuickBooks Online, which, you know, for the large majority of a lot of these customers will solve the large majority of their use cases. But sometimes when they get bigger, they'll start to use systems like Sage Intacct, or sometimes people use like trade specific stuff like Viewpoint Vista for construction, or you know, other solutions from Trimble. You got to have like a telematics vendor, right? Like what we were talking about, right? So that's like the folks like Samsara or Geotab or Azuga. And we've got a really great partnership with Azuga in particular, to know where your vehicles are at all time, make sure your techs are being like safe and driving where they're supposed to, like all the stuff that Josh was just talking about, right? And then finally, you're going to need a fleet card to sort of have that control and enable the purchasing. And obviously, that's where Coast comes in. And all these systems are like powerful in their own right. But if you can get that CRM, accounting system, telematics, fleet payments, card solutions, all like working together in an integrated way, that can be super effective way to save like time and money with like confidence that things are working the way that you want them to, and allow you, like the most important piece of all of this is like why should I buy all these systems? Because you want to spend your time focusing on growing your business, right? Like, you know, people would think that like expense management, that's not like a very exciting thing. Like you guys mentioned earlier on, it's just like, hey, you know, why are you talking to me? I've got bigger fish to fry. Because I'm like, what we find with our customers, like usually like there's a lot of the time, particularly in an organization that's like 10 vehicles or so, there's like somebody in the back office, like Judy or whatever, you know, like and like they like have like a system of manually entering stuff into the accounting system, and they've
Yep.
got like a printout on like tacked to their wall of like all the work trucks and like who's got them and what fuel card is assigned to each one of them. And if like a tech leaves your business, she'll like cross it out with a pencil and write something else in. And like at that point, like only Judy understands like the whole thing. And it turns out that like stuff is falling through the cracks. Like we love Judy, the system sort of works, but like like that there's like some abuse and inefficiency by the text that's just like she's gonna miss, right? And like and she's spending like crazy amount of time on this stuff like every month, right? If you actually have like a digitally enabled system with these tools, like our customers find one, when they switch to Coast, their fuel bill goes down monthly by like 9%. Like this is what we surveyed our actual customers. I asked them like, how come you're not spending as much on the card as you said that you would? And they're like, well, it turns out our techs were robbing us blind, or like we were just being inefficient, or whatever it is. And second, they tell us that
Sure, just by having a solution.
and second, they save 16 hours a month, and that number blew my mind. Right? Imagine sort of what could be done with that extra 16 hours in a month. You could have Judy focused on marketing and like getting more customers, right? And you yourself could just be focused on growing the business. And that's the part that really excites me about all this digital enablement. It's not about sort of a bunch of like boring back office stuff. It's about getting that stuff out of the way so you can focus on growth.
Yeah, it's amazing how much time is sucked out of lives. Just duplicate entry, needless entry that could be done automatically, could be automated in some form or fashion.
I was just going to say, I think that's where the biggest opportunity lies with, I don't always say AI, but machine learning, training it on data and having it analyze the data and spitting it back out is like having it tell us what this says so we can make decisions. Because at the end of the day, we just need to make decisions and ideally make them quicker and not get lost in this paralysis analysis of this huge master spreadsheet that only Judy can read.
And Judy's proud
right?
of it
Because
too.
the one that actually has to make.
Yeah, well,
and she's like, this is like artwork. She's putting it up on her wall because it's so amazing. It's got all these formulas and everything, and the business owner is paralyzed because he can't make a decision, or she can't make a decision on like, what do I look at?
Well, by the way, I mean, like that point about proud of it is like a really important point that you bring up, because sometimes it's like really hard to change the way of doing business in an organization, right? It's like you've been doing something like for so long. There are people who are accustomed to it. There are people who feel like an emotional connection to the processes. It's just like, well, that's just not the way we do things around here. So like when you're thinking about like doing like the adoption of these kinds of digital tools like Coast, but like also like some of the other stuff that I was cataloging, like you really need to have buy-in from like business leadership that like, hey, this is the direction that we're moving, and here's why I see the value proposition here. This is why this is going to help me be a more profitable business or a faster growing business, because you need to like really have everybody bought in. If that owner of the business is a champion of adopting these digital tools, that's kind of like what you need, because otherwise people just get really stuck in the way that they used to do.
Our company's the exact opposite. They're like, oh, Tersh has heard about some new technology. Here we go.
And you're always just like, guys, go back to work.
But you just don't understand. This is going to make us even more efficient. Like, I'm pretty sure we're over efficient
and you know what's,
right now.
Danny, this is something that Tersh and I talk about all the time, but we're each other's worst enemies too, because we do the same thing. Did you see that video? You got to see this. You got to watch this. You got to check this thing out. You know, he was helping his kid with his dirt bike last night. I'm sending him like YouTube videos on this thing about Zapier and like just total stuff that I'm like, you know, we should probably focus a little more. I feel like all of us need ADHD measures to like
stay on track there. Ask you, yes. Daniel, when we're talking about automating things, escaping meetings off the table, but what's one daily grind that you'd like to see automated?
Yeah, I guess I'd say like,
because I hate meetings. Like meetings to have meetings, like death by meetings is just terrible for me. Like I just despise them. That's my personality type, and I know that. So when I go into a meeting and I'm already in a bad mood, I have to tell myself this could be valuable. Josh does EOS, so he's getting more value out of his meetings. But other than meetings, what would you say?
I'd say like I write like 100 emails a day probably, and like it's like emails to like schedule stuff, emails to like try to move like a deal that I'm doing forward, like emails to like my personal advisors to like schedule and catch up with friends, like And like, honestly, I probably like, talking a lot about these AI tools, like I probably am not at the point where I trust ChatGPT to like write my emails for me. So like, but man, I spend like so much time sitting in my Gmail account. Like, maybe one day, like, I'll trust the tools. But in the meantime, if any of your listeners ends up writing me about anything, it's actually going to be me and not a robot yet.
Yeah, not yet.
I got a news flash for anyone that emails me, as I have someone that looks at it for me and asks me questions. Because otherwise, you're right. It literally, like, I have when I have 3 screens, so I'm looking at the middle one. I have a screen that I literally, when I first did this, before I had an assistant, the email was open all day over here. So I would like catch it out of the corner of my eye when a new email came in.
Oh, Josh and I would be in a meeting, and all of a sudden he'd be like, Josh, you're not listening to me.
Well, and with 3 screens, now you know if I'm not listening, because I'm like, what's over here? But yeah, it's funny because we had a conversation on Monday. We were doing a podcast on Monday, and someone was super successful in our industry and has a new business doing an AI tool, still answers her own email. And like, that was literally my recommendation to her. I said, just get a virtual assistant. Like, it'd be the best thing you ever do, because the things that they're able to help with and organize, like I tell her to task stuff to my team, like, just task this out to this team member. She'll ask me about calendar invites. Are you free to do this? Do you want to do this? Like, yes, no, yes, no, yes. That's just like, I don't have to deal with it and figure out how I'm going to write the email and stuff like that. But it's been the best thing that I've done in a while.
There's an email from Tersh that wants to do something.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are auto archived.
Straight to spam.
I don't even see those ones. Spam. There you go.
Archived.
Considering we're both on that domain.
Spam my own domain address.
There you go.
Daniel, where can people learn more, connect with you, learn more about your products?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to our website, which is coastpay.com. That's coastpay.com. So coast, like, East Coast, West Coast, coastpay.com. And there's like a ton of information about, our products. There's some really great customer testimonials of, like people with as few as 5 vehicles in their fleet, people with as many as 500 vehicles in their fleet, talking about sort of how Coast has transformed the way that they do business. And you can always just click the apply button and put in some basic information, find out if you are eligible for the program or speak to someone on our team. Go to coastpay.com and we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Let me ask you this real fast. What would you say is the smallest company? I didn't prepare you for this. What do you would guess?
I'd say, well, it's funny. Typically, like, we've got lots and lots of fleets that are 5 or fewer, but typically it's around that 4 or 5 where people really start to see the value of this kind of thing. Because up until then, if it's like you and your brother-in-law and you've got a plumbing company, like, you feel like you're not like trying to keep track of payments in that same kind of way, because the surface area of what you need to monitor is just smaller. By the way, it usually turns out that's the brother-in-law who is doing all the card abuse to begin with. People find that out.
It's always the people closer to you, isn't it?
Exactly.
Like, aha! Now I know why we don't have any profits.
Yeah. Keep your enemies closer. But generally speaking, the small customers aren't usually a great fit for the value proposition of the offering. So usually we see people start to really get interested around 4 or 5.
Very interesting. Okay, so this is my very last question, I promise. What do you call a funny mountain?
You're so bad.
Hang on, I'm trying. I want to see if I can get this. Give me a second.
Funny mountain.
You got me.
Hilarious. Thanks for hanging out with us, Daniel. Thank you, everybody that hung out with us today. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Daniel and his team and learn more about him. If you are listening to this and you enjoyed this content, except for my dad jokes, please leave us a review, 5-star review. And I mentioned this the other day, but please add a comment to it, because those are the ones that are.
If you're going to add a 1-star review, only Tersh's name goes in the review. That's my only request.
Nope. No.
This is super fun, Tersh and Josh. Thanks a lot for having me. This is great.
Yeah, we appreciate you hanging out with us, dude. We'll see you later.
Thanks for hanging out with us, Daniel.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Service Business Mastery. Now that you are equipped with essential business advice from this impactful conversation, you are one step closer to becoming the successful owner of your dreams. If this episode has been helpful to your business journey, don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a rating, and share it with other owners as well. Visit ServiceBusinessMastery.com to learn more.